Chapter 518, Di Yi's Plan. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. In a mass of red fog, Red Wish Emissary's tender body, with subtle curves, seemed to be a little illusory. She said in a soft voice, "Young master, I've really reached the completion of the heaven realm." Di Yi nodded his head and said, Blood Spirit Queen had refined a lot of the half-saint's light. If you refined her into a blood pill and swallowed it, your cultivation must advance rapidly. It won't be difficult for you to break through to the fish-dragon realm. After a pause, Di Yi said, "What are you going to do next? Keep breaking through to the fish-dragon realm, or stop to immerse yourself in martial arts and break through to the ultimate realm of the heaven realm?" The top geniuses would indeed face these two options before reaching the completion of the heaven realm. Each option had its own advantages and disadvantages. The former meant that a warrior could break through to the fish-dragon realm in one stroke and then get rid of the shackles of the mortal world while he was young, energetic, vigorous, and active. And then, he could transcend martial arts and enter the holy road. While the latter meant that a warrior could reach the ultimate realm and attract the court of gods, which would smooth the way to the holy road. However, a warrior would definitely stay in the completion of the heaven realm for a long time. Perhaps the warrior might die an irregular death in the end, instead of reaching the ultimate realm of the heaven realm. Red Wish Emissary did not answer the question. Instead, she said, "Young master, I have something important to tell you." Di Yi frowned and looked deeply at Red Wish Emissary. On the surface, Red Wish Emissary had important things to say. Hence, she could indeed not answer the questions first. And it was also reasonable to inform Di Yi first. However, as a superior, Di Yi could vaguely feel that Red Wish Emissary was trying to gain the initiative. Then he said calmly, "What happened?" Red Wish Emissary answered, "Great changes have occurred in the Wood Spirit primitive world. A half-saint class battle took place yesterday." Di Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "A half-saint class battle occurred in an inferior primitive world?" Even in Kunlun's field, half-saint class battles were not common. After all, half-saints had destructive power, so they would not come to blows unless there was no other way. In general, a confrontation between great forces was a matter of all representatives of the young generation. All the saints had retreated behind the scenes. No force wanted to see saint-class battles because they did not help to cause destruction to both sides, which would benefit a third party. In medium-level and superior-class primitive worlds, half-saints would actually engage in a war. But, how could half-saints appear in an inferior primitive world? Moreover, there had been fierce conflicts. It was extremely unusual. Di Yi immediately asked, "Do you know how many half-saints participated in the battle?" Red Wish Emissary replied, "At the time, although I was far away, I still could see some battle scenes with my sky eye because my spiritual power had broken through to the 40th level. According to the fluctuations of power sent from the battlefield, I could determine that two half-saints were fighting against each other. One of them should be from heresy while the other was from the Ministry of War." Di Yi smiled faintly and said, "Unexpectedly, heresy fought against the Ministry of the War." "What are the secrets of the Wood Spirit primitive world?" Red Wish Emissary said, "Since even the half-saints have come to blows, something extraordinary must have happened. I think it's necessary to report it to the first-class hall to ask the half-saints for a thorough investigation." Di Yi glanced slightly with a meaningful flash, whereafter he laughed and said, "You're right. We should really inform the first-class hall, but I'm going to the Death primitive world, so I have no time to go back. I'll leave it to you." "Yes, young master. Thanks for your trust. I'll successfully fulfill this mission." With that, Red Wish Emissary immediately left. Cyan-robed Emissary watched her back and frowned slightly, saying, "Young master, since it's such an important thing, isn't it too hasty to give this task to Red Wish Emissary?" Green-robe Emissary also nodded and said, "Red Wish Emissary is talented but still too young." Di Yi smiled with a slightly profound meaning and said, "Since Yellow God Emissary has died and Orange Star Emissary has gotten trapped, we are in urgent need of the right people. So, Red Wish Emissary should be allowed to do more to gain more experience." Cyan-robed Emissary asked nothing more and thought to himself, "Young master has been resourceful from childhood, so there must be a reason for him to do so." She said, "Just now, you said that you're going to the Death Primitive World. Why is that? At present, isn't the most important thing to deal with Jiang Yuochen and rescue Orange Star Emissary? De looked solemn and said seriously, Baekhyun Fan is experienced in the Death Primitive World. Only when I refined him into my demonic shadow could my heartless saint being reach the small success realm. I see. Cyan-robed emissary said, young master, let me accompany you to the Death Primitive World. De looked into the distance, ensuring that Red Wish emissary had already gone, and then said, no, you have to go to the Wood Spirit Primitive World to find out what happened there. Since Jiang Yuochen, the half-saint of heresy, and the Ministry of War have all been there must be some extraordinary secrets. Cyan-robed emissary said, but haven't you already sent Red Wish emissary to do that? De shook his head and said, she is, after all, Phantom Saint's disciple. Even if she discovers something, she would certainly tell him first. Moreover, I feel that she has become somewhat different. Cyan-robed emissary immediately understood that young master was already wary of Red Wish emissary, so he deliberately sent her back to the first-class hall. In fact, he just sent her away with an excuse. So, I will go to the Wood Spirit Primitive World personally. Cyan-robed emissary hesitated for a while and said, well, then, how about sending Green Robe emissary to follow you there? De shook his head once again and said, no, Green Robe emissary will keep watching Jiang Yuochen. Since he already has 12 million military merits, he'll definitely break through to the ultimate realm of the Heaven Realm, rather than be content with the status quo. Green Robe emissary frowned slightly and said, in recent days, Jiang Yuochen has been staying in 10,000 Fields Tavern, staying indoors. No one knows how long he'll stay there. Relax. He may not be here for so long. He'll definitely leave for the Xuanwu Primitive World. De looked indifferent and stared at Green Robe emissary, saying, take more people. If possible, kill him in the Xuanwu Primitive World. Green Robe emissary looked ferocious and laughed cruelly, saying, young master, please be assured that I've already arranged a large number of people from the Cave of Nine Deaths and the Blood Cloud sect in 10,000 Fields Tavern, the camping ground of the Ministry of War, and ferries of the Primitive World. As long as he shows up, Jiang Yuochen will soon be discovered. Jiang Yuochen dared to publicly provoke our Black Market Excellence Hall, first capturing Orange Star Emissary and then killing Yellow God Emissary, making us disgraced. I must cut off his head and hang it on the top of the gate of Saint Academy to let the Marshall Market Bank know that our black market can't be trifled with. Cyan-robed emissary was somewhat worried, saying, will you go to the Death Primitive World alone, young master? As far as I know, Baekhyun Fan is an extraordinary genius and a hard man to deal with. Moreover, the Death Primitive World is also very dangerous. De said with a smile, if he is too weak, I won't choose him to be my shadow. Rest assured, I also want to gain experience myself with this trip to the Death Primitive World. Maybe I can accumulate 30 million military merits in the Death Primitive World, and reach the ultimate realm of the Heaven Realm in one stroke. It's settled that we'll split up into 3 groups. I hope we all can gain something. After an hour, De and Cyan-robed emissary left Chaotic Millionverse Mountain successively and went to the Death Primitive World and the Wood Spirit Primitive World, respectively. Green Robe emissary stayed behind and continued to monitor Jiang Yuochen. Jiang Yuochen had merely refined 600 grams of Bloody Saint cultivating soil and his body already was saturated. The refinement was several times harder than before. According to previous experience, it was necessary to refine 4,950 grams of Bloody Saint cultivating soil in order to practice into the treasured body of 3 spirits. However, according to this trend, it was impossible to successfully practice the treasured body of 3 spirits in the Heaven Realm. Even if he cultivated to the Fish Dragon Realm, it would not be easy to refine 4,950 grams of Bloody Saint cultivating soil. The only thing that made him happy was that he finally made progress in martial cultivation, reaching the intermediate stage of the completion of the Heaven Realm, which was a great improvement. Let me take a look first. Jiang Yuochen stood up, flipping the dust from his body. He first went to the stump platform of the sacred prime tree and saw that Huang Yantian, Orange Star Emissary, and Auxinian were still practicing, So he went out of the inner world of the yin-yang wooden graph alone without bothering them. It had been more than a month in the scroll world. However, only 4 days had passed in chaotic Millionverse Mountain. After a 4-day development, the news that Zhang Yuochen killed Huang Shenyi, Zhang Yuochen won first place on the Heaven Board, and Xuanwu heritage appeared was widely spread. Walking on the streets established by 10,000 Fields Tavern, people could hear things about Zhang Yuochen everywhere. He never thought that his battle with Huang Shenyi in the Heavenly Ring would cause such a sensation. However, he was still very calm, with no emotion. He finally came to his destination after walking for about 15 minutes. Zhang Yuochen stopped and looked up. He saw 4 gilded ancient words, "Events under the sky" on the plaque at the top of the gate. When he walked through the gate, all kinds of squeaky voices immediately came to his ears. There were both warriors' harangues and the clinking of wine cups. It looked like a downtown. Zhang Yuochen came here to get the scoop on how many people were casting their eyes at Xuanwu heritage and himself. He had to know this fairly well before going to the Xuanwu primitive world.